Welcome to the Great Place to Work Cisco Community Impact webinar. I'm Sean Aylmer. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands on which we all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging and celebrate the diversity of our Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. Thank you for joining us today for today's Great Place to Work Cisco Community Impact webinar. Before kicking off, I'd like to say a few words about Great Place to Work. Great Place to Work is the global authority on workplace culture. Since 1992, Great Place to Work has surveyed more than 100 million employees around the world and used those deep insights to define what makes a great workplace experience. It boils down to trust. Great Place to Work helps organisations quantify their culture and produce better business results by creating a high trust work experience for all employees. Great Place to Work has published the definitive annual list of the best places to work in Australia since 2008. Great Place to Work uses its unparalleled benchmark data to recognise Great Place to Work certified companies and the best workplaces in more than 60 countries around the world. Everything Great Place to Work does is driven by its mission to build a better world by helping every organisation become a great place to work for all. Now, let me introduce AJ Gopal, Tim Fawcett, and Sam Huddle. As the Community Impact Manager for Cisco, AJ Gopal leads global strategy, operations, and thought leadership for the team that creates, curates, and consults on Cisco's corporate citizenship strategy centred around employee community impact. He partners with various internal stakeholders such as business functions, employee resource groups, regional leaders, and employee communities to drive Cisco's employee community impact efforts. He leads a team that is pioneering efforts to apply evidence-based insights built on the foundation of behavioural cognitive science, economics, and nudges to promote corporate citizenship. AJ is known for his passionate social impact leadership and comes with over a decade of experience in the social sector. Tim Fawcett is Head of Government Affairs for Cisco and part of Cisco's ANZ senior leadership team. Tim is responsible for all Cisco's government engagement activities, including public policy advocacy and legislative response. Tim also leads development and implementation of Cisco's $100 million National Engagement Plan and is an executive sponsor for a major Cisco account. Tim is a passionate advocate for inclusion and diversity, which he believes is essential for a modern sustainable business. Tim is a director of the Diversity Council of Australia and chair of its Information Technology Committee. Samantha Huddle is the general manager of Great Place to Work in Australia and New Zealand. Sam has more than 2 decades of experience from the grassroots to the C-suite and helps businesses build high trust, inclusive cultures that deliver tangible results. After starting her career at Patagonia, known for its iconic workplace culture, Sam then went on to hold senior leadership and consulting roles at corporate responsibility think tank Accountability, Great Place to Work UK, NetBalance, and EY Australia. Now, with decades of experience across the government, corporate, and purpose-driven not-for-profit sectors, Sam brings a collaborative, values-driven approach and a passion for achieving social impact through business. On to Cisco. Cisco has been named the #1 best workplace in Australia for the past 2 consecutive years. Cisco believes in the power of technology and its purpose is to power an inclusive future for all. 93% of employees at Cisco Systems Australia say it's a great place to work compared to just 55% at a typical Australian-based company. One of the stats that I love is that 95% of employees say they're proud to tell others that they work at Cisco. I've done enough talking, let's jump into it.
Tim, I might start with you. The purpose in business is a hallmark of best workplaces, recognised by Great Places to Work. Cisco has been recognised as Australia's #1 best workplace for the past 2 years, incredible performance. How important is purpose inside Cisco and how important is trust?
Yeah, hi Sean. Thanks for that introduction. Joining you from Wurundjeri down here in Melbourne today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Well, both are highly important. It's an interesting question. Both are highly important and both are, if you like, complementary to each other. I think, if anything, the last 2 years has shown us is that people are really deeply questioning why they work where they work. Now, for a lot of people, that answer is obvious, and that is to feed the family, feed myself, feed my family. But I think one of the other things people are really questioning is they're looking for meaning, not only in work, but in all the things that we put our energy and our emotion and our time into. And I think doing your day job well provides that meaning. That's part of the answer to the question. But people are also looking to connect more broadly. You know, what do I do daily? How can I connect that with a bigger purpose? How is that adding meaning to my life? How is what I do each day making a difference to the world I live in? I think those are questions that many people are asking themselves, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why there is a worldwide phenomenon of people moving around jobs and changing employers and changing careers in many cases. I think the way that Cisco's reacted to that has been very insightful. One of those is to develop a really clear global purpose as a business, and that is quite simple: powering an inclusive future for all. Now, with that, what does that mean? Well, it means bridging gaps of inequality and exclusion worldwide through our technologies that we build, and the fact that we're a very large company, global company, and we have an extended ecosystem. It also means that we have a strong commitment to corporate social responsibility and social justice, a strong commitment to our teams and our people, and a strong commitment to the support we bring to our communities. Now, for us in Australia, that takes meaning and takes life through our country impact plan, which we hope gives meaning to our employees, and we think that's reflected in the Great Place to Work results over the last couple of years. And that country impact plan has 3 pillars: human capital, healthy communities, and digital economy. And through those 3 pillars, we are investing in a range of different activities which our employees can participate and be part of, thereby hopefully bringing meaning to their everyday life, their everyday work. Now, on the issue of trust, once you have the framework in place which empowers employees, it provides the platform for trust. And the trust is 2-way. The first way is that employers trust their leaders, that they are providing them with meaning, that they are providing them with purpose, above and beyond just doing their everyday job very well, which is an important thing for all of us. And I think it's also that leaders can trust employees, that they can feel empowered to actually do something good, to have a positive impact, not only through doing their day job well, but something bigger. So I think within that framework, you find that it provides meaning and trust to employees at Cisco, and hopefully that's reflected in our results.
Yeah, it certainly is. I love the fact that everything you've just said then, Tim, not once did remuneration, pay, wages get mentioned. It's much more than that. And in fact, in some ways, that's a secondary consideration, it sounds.
Yeah, it's a good point. And look, of course, that's important. It's important to everyone. But there's been, and I joined Cisco 10 years ago, and I remember the first day I joined, I read a study about Gen Y employees who were valuing bringing their own device to work as much higher than, say, a $15,000 pay rise. Remarkable research, which has only accelerated and changed and morphed as people can bring their own device to work now. So the technology has enabled the thing that people were looking for in the employment marketplace. But what has risen up is this notion of meaning and purpose, as in terms of your first question. I think the motto at Cisco is quite simple. That is, do your day job well, and then make a positive impact outside of your day job. And the fact that employees understand that they have an opportunity and an ability within the company and outside of the company to do that, that they're empowered to do that or have an opportunity to do that, I think it means a lot to them above and beyond remuneration. So for Cisco, we have a number of programs. For example, we have globally a policy called Time to Give, where employees can take up to 5 days paid leave per year to give back to the community in the form of volunteering work with not-for-profits, with mentoring or teaching, providing learning opportunities for students. We also have things like our global Cisco Foundation, where employees can volunteer and raise funds for not-for-profits that are then matched by our Cisco Foundation globally. Internally, we have things like our employee resource organisations, such as Cisco Pride or the Cisco Asian Affinity Network, Women of Cisco, the Cisco Disability Awareness Network, the Cisco Autism Awareness Network, just to name 3 or 4, where employees can come together with other people that they share an affinity with and do amazing things both with inside the company and externally from the company. I mentioned mentoring of women and young people in science, technology, engineering and maths is a very strong enabling opportunity for our people. Our National Innovation Network, a partnership that we have with universities right around the country where we're using technologies to do creative and innovative things right across the Australian economy and community, is another opportunity. And then, of course, there's things through our Reconciliation Action Plan activities like observing NAIDOC Week, for example. It's a great opportunity for our employees to have an experience which provides deep meaning and purpose and trust for them above and beyond just their remuneration.
Sam, you've just heard Tim really run through many things Cisco does. How does that fit in with the definition of a great place to work for all?
Oh, look, absolutely. And right to the heart of it, purpose, meaning and trust. So where we talk about a great place to work for all, it's one where everyone, no matter who they are or what they do, is having this consistently positive experience at work. And this is something that we see very clearly in Cisco's employee survey results. They have caring leaders that provide an environment where everybody has a purpose and they can contribute to their ideas, and they have the resources that they need to thrive within an organisation. And it's important because by enabling people and businesses and for people in businesses to reach their full potential, great places to work for all actually help society by creating a place where people are experiencing fairness and caring and shared opportunity and prosperity. And we know this is exactly what happens at Cisco because they've taken out the #1 spot on the best workplaces list for the past consecutive years during a global pandemic, which is, quite an achievement. We also see purpose in the academic literature, and we had a landmark study that was conducted by using Great Place to Work data by academics at Harvard, Columbia and Wharton. And they found that purpose can differ widely between different organisations, but what matters is that employees aren't simply focused on profit, but they've also focused on goals apart from profit, and that stating a corporate purpose isn't enough. It has to be authentic and it has to be guided by decision-making from managers. So this research actually found 6 purpose clarity statements that companies can actually measure using Great Place to Work's Trust Index survey. And the 6 statements were: my work has special meaning, this is not just a job. When I look at what we accomplish, I feel a sense of pride. I'm proud to tell others I work here. I feel good about the ways we contribute to the community, but also management makes its expectations clear, and management has a clear view of the organisation and where it's going and how it's going to get there. Now, when we look at these 6 statements and Cisco's performance at the Great Place to Work Trust Index, on average, 91% of their employees are having a consistently positive experience of these high purpose clarity statements, which is quite amazing.
Okay, AJ, I might bring you in here from a more global perspective. And so we've all been talking about the UN Climate Change Summit going on in Glasgow over the last week and into this week. I think purpose and meaning, really, you can take hold of those words when you can relate it to something as big as the UN Climate Change Summit. I think it makes a lot of us think more about it. What's Cisco's response been in that area? Not necessarily, or to the summit, but just generally to the issues.
Sean, with respect to COP26, Cisco is a proud partner to the conference that's taking place in Glasgow. Now it is top of mind for us. It's top of the mind for everyone around the world, including our employees. For those in Glasgow, Cisco is providing our state-of-the-art networking technologies embedded with our powerful visibility and network intelligence to help provide a seamless connectivity experience for up to 25,000 in-person attendees over the course of the 2 weeks. For those who are joining virtually, our platform Legislate for WebEx will connect discussions, facilitate conversations, and press conferences. All the networking technology being used for this event will be repurposed to ensure no equipment is wasted as well. When it comes to Cisco, our purpose is to power an inclusive future for all, and we truly believe that committing to the cause of sustainability is paramount to achieving this inclusive future. Our involvement in COP26 is one part of the story. The two other highlights that I'd also like to speak about is how Cisco recently committed to reaching net zero across all scopes of emissions by 2040. This includes our emissions across product use, operations, and supply chain. Our net zero goal will also be supported by near-term ambitious targets, including to reach net zero across all global scope 1 and scope 2 emissions by 2025. Along with this, the second call out for me personally that really resonates with me is how Cisco Foundation has committed to $100 million over 10 years to help reverse the impact of climate change. This commitment will fund nonprofit grants and impact investments that support bold climate change solutions, as well as community education and activation. So Cisco is trying to bring forth everything in our repertoire, right from our investments, our technology, our people power, to be able to address this issue.
Okay, Tim, I suppose, look, staff, customers, investors, everyone involved in the business understands the challenges in some of these sorts of issues, such as climate change and modern slavery, but presumably they want to work with partners who are doing something about it.
Absolutely, Sean. I mean, this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just happening in Australia. It's happening in many advanced economies around the world and many broader economies around the world. So, Cisco as a listed company is not immune to these changes that are taking place in our society, and particularly through investors in companies and the movement of capital. And I think we're seeing that with play out right before our eyes at COP26 with pledges and commitments around financiers in relation to financing carbon neutral or net zero technologies and investments, and pausing on investments that are going to be emitting carbon into the atmosphere without mitigation. So we're seeing that in the marketplace. But absolutely, these are market-driven changes. Customers are demanding, from, I think, anyone that they do business with in their supply chain, what is your story in relation to climate change? What is your story in relation to modern slavery? What is your story in relation to data security and data privacy? What is your story in relation to the circular economy? In Australia, what are you doing in relation to reconciliation? These are modern movements that are changing the way that companies do business, and absolutely seeing them invest more fully in giving authentic action to quote what Sam said earlier. It's one thing to have the plan. It's another thing to actually activate it and see your leaders back at 100% and empower employees and leaders to actually live those principles in their day-to-day operation, as well as making an impact from a corporate perspective. So I think these changes are part of the market, and if you really want to be competitive in the market, they're things that you need to react and respond to in any case. So I think what's happening is a good thing, and it's good to see corporations make these shifts, but I also think we're seeing it much, much more in small to medium enterprises right across the world as well, who are part of larger supply chains. We're only going to see that connectivity, if you like, between these larger societal issues and small to medium and larger businesses and governments around the world. It's only going to become closer and closer, and being successful in what you do, regardless of whether it's for profit or not for profit or for purpose, businesses and organisations is going to depend on how you react and respond to those larger forces, particularly in how your employees react and respond and whether or not they want to come and work for you or not.
It's a good point, Sam. Just taking it away from Cisco for a moment, I know Great Place to Work have done some research on this type of thing and the positive impact having a purpose means for staff.
Look, absolutely we have. And, we know that if a company's not walking the talk and there's not that authenticity in what they're saying, what they're claiming to do, it's going to be showing up. The first place it's going to be showing up is in their employee comments, because their employees are likely to be the first people that are calling them on it. We did some research in the US earlier this year, and they found there that companies that had invested in generous corporate social responsibility efforts during the pandemic had 15.6, their employees were 15.6 times more likely to say that their company was a great place to work. And so we found that when these leaders were helping the community, it wasn't just boosting employee sentiment and feeling good about how they contributed to the community, but there are a host of other benefits. They were 1.9 times more likely to experience pride in their organisation, 1.7 times more likely to report that they were receiving a fair share of profits in the organisation, 1.7 times more likely to say that their work had special meaning rather than being just a job, and 1.6 times more likely to say that their executives fully embodied the best characteristics of the company. So yeah, if a company's not walking the talk, employees are going to be the first group to call them out on that. And we see that. And we also see that, in Cisco's employee comments this year, a number of employees were talking about the company's progressive stance on things like social justice issues, as well as climate change, and how much they appreciated and they valued not just the caring culture in the way that they were treated as employees, but the care that Cisco actually showed to the communities in which they operated too.
Okay, AJ, bringing it more sort of a bit more local, a bit more specific, how does Cisco think about community impact of a company?
For Cisco, giving back has a lot of verticals, and community impact specifically is our innovative approach to recognizing and celebrating all the ways our employees make a positive impact on people, our planet, and society. When we look at Cisco, we're a global company, over 77,000 employees spread over 96 countries. So we need an approach that is inclusive and speaks to the aspirations and motivations of all these employees in how they want to give back. And that's where community impact is an approach that celebrates all positive actions that employees take to give back to their communities. Now, this approach is a step up or an evolution from the traditional model of giving back, where we used to look at employees only volunteering their time or making monetary donations to causes which were counted as giving back. Whereas now we are treating all actions that matter to employees and their community involvement to qualify. Actions such as sustainability efforts, when people are passionate about green actions, actions such as advocacy efforts relating to causes that they care deeply about. All of these are part of the inclusive framework under community impact. So we're moving away from a prescriptive approach to a more inclusive approach. And that is what community impact is all about.
I suppose that helps you become more inclusive. You're not really dictating from the top how people can make a difference. You're actually doing it bottom up, letting people decide how they can make a difference.
Exactly. So it all started with our employees who essentially spoke to us saying, there are so many ways we do giving back and we'd love for that to be included. And that's how the evolution started for us.
Okay. Tim, how about some day-to-day examples? Now, we have done rehearsal, and you had me laughing, Tim, about some of the things that you're expecting some people to do, things that I would have no chance of doing. But then you went on to explain how everyone kind of had a choice in how they contributed. What are some of the day-to-day examples that the ANZ business, Australia, New Zealand business partake in?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Well, perhaps the one that gave you a bit of a chuckle was the Cisco Passion for the Push-Up Challenge earlier this year, which was in support of raising funds and supporting our not-for-profit partner, Lifeline Australia, who's been doing remarkable work over the last 2 years in particular, and for many, many years before that. But everyone is aware of the surge in support for mental health and mental wellness, well-being, and Lifeline's doing a terrific job. But the push-up challenge was something we participated in this year in the month of June, where you undertake to do, each individual undertakes to try and do 3,139 push-ups over 26 days, which sounds like a lot, but that number actually reflects the number of people that committed suicide in 2019. Quite a remarkable figure, and in itself quite shocking. So something that I think hit home with our employees right at the start when we committed to being part of this program and challenged to raise funds for Lifeline. Now, one of the things that we were cautious of when we first approached it was making sure that if you're not a super athlete, or even if you're not of an athletic bent, that you're still able to participate in something called the push-up challenge. So we certainly didn't want that notion of 3,139, which is quite a number of push-ups over 26 days, to turn people off from participating. So the way that we messaged our involvement, our participation in the program, and great work done by Corey Moran and our communications team at Cisco, was really to make sure that the way it was positioned with people was that they were able to participate regardless of whether or not they did push-ups or not. So there could be other forms of exercise like steps or going for a walk. We certainly wanted people to try and get active, because the link between physical activity and mental wellness, mental health is well known. So we didn't want people to not do something active, but you didn't have to be perhaps a super triathlete to knock out 3,139 push-ups over 26 days to be able to participate in this. So people made videos of them doing things, exercising. Remember, during lockdown as well, so remotely. And this actually was a great way for people to come together in teams through competition. There was Push-Up Challenge has a leaderboard, both in terms of the overall Cisco performance. Glad to say we were number one, but also all of the individual Cisco teams. And I think there were 29 different teams from around the country that participated in that. And again, people that did push-ups, people that did squats, people that went for a walk, people that did a combination of activities. And most importantly, we were able to raise over $100,000 for our partner Lifeline, which is Cisco's largest ever single fundraising activity in our history as a corporation in Australia. And we had literally hundreds of employees around the country that were participating in it. So I think the important thing there is that, one, focusing on something that was meaningful and purposeful for our employees at a particularly difficult time when we were all, not everyone around the country, but large percentage of us were locked down. And even those that weren't locked down were actually feeling very supportive of those that were. So it was great to see that come together as well. And then that ability to help support our not-for-profit partner Lifeline in the work that they do. So we had this dual benefit, if you like, for our employees internally, and then our not-for-profit partner, and ergo the wider community through that activity.
Sam, anyone else doing push-ups out there apart from Cisco? And I think you do have to be a super athlete to do that many push-ups, just quietly, Tim. Where does Cisco sit? How does it compare with others?
Yeah, look, a lot of the best workplaces are doing great work, but Cisco's results really are up above and beyond. We've recently completed our 2021 Global Employee Engagement Benchmark Survey, where we've looked at the state of workplaces across the globe, including in Australia. And the average employee experience for the statement, people care about each other here, was 57%. Now at Cisco, in Australia and New Zealand, it's actually 94%. So that's 37 points higher. So that means that almost 4 in 10 more employees at Cisco feel cared about than at the average organisation. This study also looked at 14,000 workers in 37 countries to look at the average employee experience around the world. And one of the things they looked at was 87% of employees at Cisco say that their work has special meaning. It's not just a job. So globally, the average is 58%, but actually in Australia, it's 15 points lower. It's only 43%. So I think there is an opportunity for other workplaces out there to really do more and be inspired by some of the work that Cisco's showing on this particular measure. Some of the other things that the survey looked at was how often, what percentage of people want to stay with their organisation for a long time, and whether they would strongly endorse their company to family and friends as a great place to work. Now, globally, the average for that is 48%. At Cisco, 89% of employees would like to stay for a long time, and 92% would strongly endorse their company to friends and family. And so what we see with Cisco is there's this really high trust culture where their people are really empowered and enabled, and their people actually see that there's this consistent approach between the way the company's walking the talk, between the purpose that's lived out in their day-to-day experience with their managers, and how that impacts on the work they do outside the company as well.
AJ, the statistics are really interesting, and Cisco do incredibly well. I know that you measure a lot of the data that you get to quantify your impact on communities and on your employee experience. How do you lean on the data? How does it work?
There are three pillars that are foundational to our community impact story: inclusion, digitization, data analytics. So we lean on data to help inform our strategy, help understand employee behavior, participation trends, and impact trends. What we do have are digital platforms that they are able to track employee participation, and all of this feeds into a data analytics engine, and then which is refreshed on a periodic basis. And how we use this data is also very interesting. We sort of gamify the experience of how this data is consumed. We came up with a concept of a community impact widget that sits front and center on one of our internal portals that's heavily visited by our employee base. And through this widget, teams are able to track their individual participation, what is their team's participation, and how is Cisco faring. This sort of creates a gamified experience where there's a healthy competition between teams and functions and countries in order to achieve the targets that we are setting out from a community impact perspective. Along with that, what we are also able to do via our data analytics engine is we have visibility into what are the preferred programs that our employees want to participate in. How many actions are our people taking? What's the kind of impact that our employees are creating with these actions? All of these become very interesting insights, which when offered to stakeholders become great levers for motivating employees, leaders to become advocates and ambassadors of the work that we're doing. One call out that I'd love to make is through this data, what we are able to see is through scale of participation, we're seeing scale of impact to the community. By this, what I mean is during the fiscal years FY20 and FY21, 80% of Cisco employees globally were involved in giving back to their communities. That's 4 out of 5 Cisco employees. Now, this was during a pandemic with everything that was going on around us. But despite everything, this scale of participation translated to over 750,000 hours of employee volunteering time, over $67 million that was raised in support of charities around the world. This is the tangible impact that our employees are able to create around the world thanks to their participation. And leaning on data and using this as a lever to feed back into our community impact strategy and execution is how we are doing this.
Yeah, AJ, the beauty of that, of course, is that you can watch what people want to do and don't want to do. And so Cisco as an organization can improve what it can offer to its employees, which again is a great benefit to staff.
Exactly.
Tim, you mentioned mental health earlier on, and as a cause that you support with Lifeline. Certainly COVID has elevated mental health challenges, and particularly in the workplace. I presume some of these initiatives, it's not just to help those who can contact Lifeline, but it's also to help your own employees and your own people as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. I mean, our lives have become more insular during lockdowns. We've all experienced that sense of isolation, not just from our families and friends, but, isolation from your workplace. from community sports and recreation activities, even from our ability to travel places, which Australians have been great travellers, and we've not been able to do that even in many cases internally in our own country. So that notion of, meaning and purpose that we get from those things that we're connected to has become, even more essential to our people at Cisco. And we're trying to strive for ways that we can continue to have an impact on the communities that we live in despite being isolated. Our partnership with Lifeline Australia has been really valuable in not only helping Lifeline do their work, which has risen exponentially in terms of the calls to the service. And one of the innovations that we worked with Lifeline with during this rise in their own workload was the ability to provide text-based counselling and connection capability. So that was a good innovation that also played out really well in terms of responding to that increased demand. But that our partnership acknowledges that mental health is an issue that we all experience, that it's not hidden. And, we all have had to deal with that, either directly ourselves or indirectly through our families and friends and others over the past 2 years in ways and at a scale that we just couldn't have imagined. So that partnership has enabled us to really say to our employees, not only is this helping the community, but it's also the company recognising that that this is an important issue for you and for your families and the things and people that are valuable for you, and that we have this as front of mind as one of our issues, along with obviously the internal support services that we have for our employees should they need it. And look, I think the thing to note there, Sean, is even though we're coming out of lockdowns and living with COVID very successfully on a global scale, Australia and New Zealand are doing, it's an issue that suddenly isn't going to go away or disappear or overnight be fixed. The impact of the last 2 years and what we may face again in the future is going to have long-lasting effects. And these are things that we need to confront and face and deal with as a society and as a business, and do it at scale for some time yet. So I think that's one of the key learnings for us out of our partnership with Lifeline and the way that we've reacted to that.
Jim, just a couple of very quick questions because they're running out of time. None of this happens without leadership, though. It's great to talk about it, but you actually need an organisation with leaders prepared to take it on.
Definitely you do. And I think one of the, foundations for our success, if you want to call it that, is really what was shown by our chairman and CEO, Chuck Robbins. I mean, when COVID struck, the way that the business reacted, both in terms of the way that we wrapped our arms around our own employees, but also the way that we came forward with our customers, and particularly our government customers around the world, by offering a whole range of free services, including obviously platforms like WebEx that we're on today, but also our ability for networking and security and collaboration platforms and compute capability, which we provided free of charge for several months in the first outbreak, because businesses and government services needed to transition instantly and immediately and effectively, and do that in a secure way. So that was one way we reacted. But Chuck also really stood up around things like Black Lives Matter movement in the US. Now, we're obviously a US headquartered company, but with a global workforce. But that was a really inflection point, if you like, in Cisco's commitment to social justice, where Chuck Robbins spoke very, very strongly, not only about not tolerating racial inequality and inequality more broadly, but that Cisco was actually going to be putting its money where its mouth is and creating, making donations to organisations to tackle Black Lives Matter and actually speak out using our brand and our corporation to make change and try and bring about effective change over the short, medium and longer term. And that manifested itself in a social justice principle, a set of social justice principles which had actions attached to those, including looking openly and I guess very clearly at our own organisation, the way we're structured and the way that we can change and set targets and goals to actually bring more equality particularly racial equality into our own organisation. So when you're an employee that sits in a country which is 10,000 miles away from where you're headquartered, and you see your CEO and chairman do that, it sends a really clear signal to you. It also sends a really clear signal to managers throughout the organisation that, you've got a green light to make a change here, and you need to get on board with this change that's taking place, learn about it, communicate it to your people leaders, and be part of the change yourself. So I think that was really strong. The other insight, I think, which was really clear, was that our if you like, our chief people officer, a woman named Fran Katsoutis, one of our important leaders in the business, Fran's title changed over the last 18 months. And Fran's title expands to be the Chief People, Purpose and Policy Officer within Cisco. So two key additions there, obviously adding the term purpose, recognising that that notion of purpose needs to sit at the highest levels of our senior executive leadership team. Fran, being one of our senior leaders, took that title of purpose on as well. And then adding the term policy in there so that the government affairs function effectively runs under Fran now as well through Michael Timoney, our Senior Vice President for Government Affairs globally. But it recognises that government affairs for Cisco and policy for Cisco is not just about technology policy or tax policy or policies relating to the operation of our business. It includes policies relating to racial equality and inequality. It includes policies relating to diversity and inclusion. It includes policies relating to reconciliation. It includes policies relating to disability awareness. So these are social policies, if you like, but which Cisco can play a leadership role in helping influence to get better outcomes. And I think, again, if you're an employee and you see that in action, we're not just trying to open up more spectrum for our Wi-Fi technology, we're actually trying to bring about social change as well and be part of that conversation where in times past we might not have been. I think that sends a really clear signal about what the business that you work for stands for, and hopefully that's a positive thing that we hope others in our industry and in the economy more broadly see and look to be part of, just as we choose to be part of and look for leadership from our customers and partners in the economy as well.
Tim, we are out of time, but I need to ask you, how important is it to be recognised as Australia's #1 best workplace by a Great Place to Work?
Highly important. We're really, really proud that it's happened 2 years in a row. I think getting to #1 isn't easy, but staying there is even harder. And the fact that it's happened 2 years in a row is something we are very proud of. That's not to say we're going to rest on our laurels. We want to stay on top. And I think, some of the changes that we're bringing through and have brought through over the last 12 months, hopefully will continue to reflect well with our employees. We love being part of the Great Place to Work organisation and the work Sam does and the team. It's intensive, but it's something that really focuses our business. And I was actually standing with Ben Dawson, our Vice President for Australia and New Zealand, when the announcement was made. And I can tell you it was genuine excitement in the organisation, the fact that we had won it for a second year, but just winning it in the first place is something that really means a lot to us. And I know it means a lot to our people as well. So it's something we can all rally around and continue to be part of. And we're grateful for the opportunity to continue to be part of these webinars.
Well done. Congratulations and good luck for 3 years running. You never know. AJ, Tim, Sam, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Sean. Thank you, AJ
Pleasure.
and Tim.
Our next webinar will be a masterclass with Lena Calibria, Chief Operating Officer, and Andy Falshaw, CEO, co-founders of Bellroy, at 11 a.m. on the 23rd of November. I'll be interviewing Lena and Andy about the #1 small best workplace and B Corp's unique culture and purpose-driven adaptive leadership. Just before I sign off, a quick reminder that if you would like to start your journey towards becoming a great place to work and achieve recognition on the 2022 Best Workplaces list, the first step is to get certified. It's an easy 2-step process. Please refer to the chat for details where you can join our community, or feel free to contact Sam directly via the email address on the slide. I'm Sean Aylmer. Thank you for joining us.